Okay, welcome back here to part two of the homemade bird feeder out of PVC pipe. This is where we left off in part one. Just figured I'd pick up here, sort of overlap a little bit. So if you, and I'll be sure in the description to put a link to the other part of it. I just figured one video would have been over an hour, would have been too much. But what we're doing now is measuring this block of wood. We're going to be cutting these notches out where I'm marking with the marker. And you can see I have it mounted in a bench vise. But if you don't have a bench vise with like sawhorses, you could take a C-clamp and clamp it down. And again, this is my cordless multi-oscillating cutting tool. I used a good bit in the first video. It comes in quite handy, and you can see how nicely it's cutting that little notch out. Now I'll give it a turn around and do the other cut in the bench vise, and we'll be ready to, you'll see what we're going to be doing with this block of wood here very shortly. Yes, this cordless oscillating cutting tool is not the fastest, but it's better than working manually, and it does a nice job. Okay, I'm just going to take now the sander and some 80 grit paper and smooth up here where I had cut with the oscillating cutting tool. We'll just smooth it out some. Okay, and if you notice here, I pulled it out of the bench vise. When I worked with the orbital sander, I like put a beveled edge, so it's sort of like rounded where it's going to be going in the PVC pipe, the main section of it. That's the main body of the bird feeder. And in the last video, I took and marked halfway across this pipe with the magic marker, and you can see I'm lining the block of wood up dead center with those marks on the magic marker on the one part, and there it's a nice firm fit. And that's again going to be the base of it eventually, where we're going to be mounting the plate to take and hold the bird seed. And I'm going to take and mark each side here. We're going to be drilling a hole and putting a screw in this so it don't fall out with the bird seed. That wouldn't be good. Although where I live, the deer would sure be happy if it hit the ground. They'd just take full advantage of it. And here I'm drilling a 1/8 inch hole. And needless to say, give it a half a turn and we'll drill one in on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to take a 3/16 inch drill bit. Quarter would work also. And drill where I had drilled the 1/8 inch hole, but only barely drill in a little bit. All we're going to be doing, the purpose of this is to countersink the flathead wood screw when it comes time to put it in. And there's a close-up of what I'm talking about. And you notice in listening to the drill, it didn't even barely like a turn and a half is all it takes for you to go too far. I do have countersinks, but I don't know where they're at, and I don't know if they work on the PVC right or not, but that served the purpose, and it's the only 2 times we're going to be doing that. Now I'm just installing the screws. In addition, I believe the screws I'm using are 1 inch long, maybe 1.5 inches, but the big thing, they're not real thick. They're only like number 8s, I believe. Don't want to use too thick or you'll crack the 3/4 inch piece of wood. That is just, I mentioned it in the first video, a scrap piece of furry strip I had laying around the house. Also, to avoid cracking the wood, that's why I'm not using any cordless screwdrivers or impact little wrenches or anything. I'm just turning them. Again, it's the only 2 we're going to be doing, so it's not like you have to install 50 screws or anything on building this feeder. Okay, now I'm going to finish tightening the screw, take and lay the main part of the bird feeder on this piece of smart side I had left laying around, and draw a circle the outside diameter and take the feeder off of it. Now what I want is a half an inch larger than the PVC pipe. What we're doing, we're making the lid for it. You could just go buy a cap for the PVC pipe. They're usually fairly snug fitting. It might be hard to take off, but I don't have one. Again, I'm making this for a Mother's Day gift, and it's only a day away. And I don't feel like running 20 miles to the hardware store, so again, we're using stuff that's available on hand. And as you can see, I keep marking a half inch out past the original mark made with the bird feeder, and then I'm just real carefully making the circle around. Again, it don't have to be 100% perfect, but I do believe it's looking pretty much like a circle. And again, this little roller and the magic marker is what I have on hand at the time. Yes, don't ask me. I haven't used it in years. I had a compass as a child in high school. I used it some, but don't ask me where it's at. It would make this job easier. But again, this is working out. If I would have thought of it, I'll have to get one for the future for doing little projects such as this. Indeed, as mentioned in the first part, just from becoming an idea that I thought up in my head till reality was all happened within about a 24-hour time frame. We had bears destroy a store-bought feeder we had, and again, I was looking real quick to come up with something on the internet to make in place of it there. And I looked at stuff designed using pop bottles and such, which that'd be good for a quick, cheap, and again, like I say, temporary feeder. But I know the pop bottles aren't really that heavy duty, and that's again, I stumbled across that PVC pipeline that we had left from a project there putting the drain in our basement, and this one thing came to another. This again, I sort of am making this up as I'm going along, but it falls into place. And again, the completed feeder showed at the beginning of the video. Anyhow, the circle's drawn. Done boring you with that. Drawing my circle without the compass, and we're going to be grabbing the jigsaw here, and we're going to be cutting the circle out. A little bit more excitement here in the video. Now, to make life a little bit easier, I'm just going to cut straight down, get this freed out of the main part, and then we're going to bring it back and clamp it down, and then we're going to finish cutting the circle out. Yeah, the cordless jigsaw is not as quick as the electric, but it works. And I actually bought this at a Salvation Army store for $3. I already had Craftsman cordless tools and the right battery. Alrighty, that concludes cutting that circle. And we're going to take again the orbital sander and just sort of round it up, smooth it out, get some of the jagged edges and that taken care of on it. Yes, don't do as I do. I probably should have it clamped down instead of holding it with one hand and sanding with the other, but I'll acknowledge the fact, but just don't repeat. Be safe. But again, like I say, I wasn't even paying attention till making the video, and there you can see we have the edge nice and smoothed up. And see, that's like that OSB board on the other side, and then we're just going to take, and I'm going to smooth the edge up here so when you do pull the lid off, you don't get any splinters or such there. That's always a painful situation. Okay, you could pick it up here, show you a close-up of where I'm satisfied with that. It's a little bit, maybe the circle's not perfect, but not bad. Now I'm going to take and measure so it's nice and even the whole way around, because again, this is where it's going to be overhanging the PVC pipe. But I'm going to take, we're going to be cutting another circle piece of wood here very shortly. Oh, and in addition, I think earlier when I was drawing the circle with the ruler, I said about making it a half an inch. I made it an inch larger in diameter than the PVC pipe. I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah, half inch wouldn't be enough, but there we take, once it's centered around, I took and drew again a circle using the PVC pipe for the guide. Now what we need to do is make another piece of wood, a circle, that'll fit on the inside of the PVC pipe. And here, this is the thickness of the wall of the pipe. I'm just putting 2 marks, which is roughly like a quarter of an inch, perhaps 3/8 of an inch. And condensed answer, the inside diameter of the pipe is 4 inches. And it just happens this old oil can is exactly, and it fits nicely in the pipe. If you look here, it saves a lot of trouble on making my circle. It actually fits right inside the PVC pipe, and now we're going to take and cut another circle out. Then now you know if you can find something 4 inches in diameter, it's a circle, you can get a quick way to draw a 4-inch circle. And once you know, have to move the clamp, it's in the way to finish cutting the circle out. Okay, just a little bit here, reclamp it down, and then I think we'll be able to finish cutting this now. Yeah, I'm surprised they're actually turning out as good as they are. I'm not the best with the jigsaw, I don't use them that often, but yeah, it didn't turn out too bad at either one of these. Okay, now the moment of truth, finish cutting this, and now, what I want to see is will it fit inside the main piece of pipe. It's not quite fitting in, but we're going to take the sander to it as we did earlier, and it's not going to take much, and I think it will go here. Oh, and by the way, I do have the piece of wood clamped down, but it still wants to jump out of the clamp. This is where, and I wouldn't have much purpose for it often. The sander that like Harbor Freight has, the disc sander where you can take and works like the drill press that you could take and work around would be nice, but I wouldn't have a lot of use for it, but this would have been one time for it. Okay, now let's take here and see if it fits now. That's fairly smooth now, I will say that. And there's back to our pipe, and see if we'll give it a turn, if it'll go in this time. And look at that, and that is a very nice fit. You couldn't ask for any nicer, and it falls out, so that will work. And now all we have to do is fasten it to the larger circle we cut out. And I think you see, this is going to be our homemade lid, sort of stylish made out of the wood, and that's where, again, those 2 earlier marks I put where the pipe were. I'm just going to take and add another 1 or so and just make sure it is, so when the lid sits on, it is fairly much centered around. And here, just take and measure again. Okay, I'm pretty much satisfied where it's going to be. And check once more. I'm going to just now take and magic marker, now that I'm happy where it is, I feel it's going to be nice and centered. Draw a circle, and then we're going to take some wood glue and apply it to the unfinished side of the top part of the lid. Trying to use a cautious amount. I don't want a whole bunch running out to the sides if I can help it, but it should be about nice there and shouldn't be too much that will run out over. And then take our unfinished side and face it towards the other unfinished side. Okay, and then we're going to still take here and do another step. To hold this, we're going to drill a few holes and put some screws in this. Indeed, you could probably just use the wood screws minus the glue, or use the glue and clamp it, but I'd sooner overbuild it and underbuild it. And our screws are only 3/4 inch long. Don't want it to stick out the other side. If you would happen to use a little bit too long a screw, you could just take and cut the head off. Well, the point sticks out the other side a little bit there, but I did choose wisely that it does not stick out. And we're going to take and grab and drill another hole. And grab our screwdriver and turn it in. And there again, on that, I don't want to put it in with a cordless screwdriver because the force behind it would drive it in too far, and there's only like about 1/8 of an inch to keep it from coming out the other side. And again, if you use like a cordless screwdriver, it undoubtedly would stick out. And I'm going to end up putting 2 more screws in this total. I'm just going to drill the last 2 holes right now. And on the good news, I didn't put too much glue on. I don't see any glue running out the side, so that's good. I didn't really want to, if I could avoid it, once squeezes out from underneath the 2 pieces, doesn't do any good for anything. It's just a waste of glue, but seems to be just the right amount. And get our last screw installed. And we can go proceed on to the next step on bird feeder production, which the next step isn't going to be too difficult here, because simply after we finish putting the screw in, get this tightened up, I want to take and just be sure, and I don't see why not, if it still fits in the bird feeder how I had planned it. And take here, there we go, and there's the main top of it, the bottom. Now let's see if it does fit in the bird feeder. And look at that. It sits right in there. It's a snug fit, but not a real snug fit. And it overhangs out over the PVC pipe, which is what I wanted. Okay, now that was a success, going to take the oscillating cut-off tool and cut the smaller PVC pipe flush with the main part of it. Alrighty, there's a look at one trimmed off. That's as close as I can get it with the oscillating cutoff tool, which isn't bad. Again, this is going to be so the birds can sit on those perches I'm installing and eat food out of other spots, but I didn't want to try to aggravate myself making the pipe the exact length of the diameter of the big PVC pipe, so this way I figured they could just be trimmed off. You could also take probably just a hacksaw blade and cut them off, but this is a little bit easier, although I will admit it's still not the fastest method of doing it, but it's getting it done, and without, like I say, making any real gouges or anything in the main part of the bird feeder. Alrighty, there was the last one trimmed off, and I'm going to just take the orbital sander and the 80 grit paper and smooth them down some more, get it as fairly as flush as possible to the main part of the PVC pipe. If you notice, you can see the residue from the silicone that was put around the smaller pipe in the last video, which we will be taking care of that after we're done sanding. Okay, that takes care of the sanding, and now I'm going to use some of this wax and grease remover. You can buy this at Walmart. It's Rust-Oleum brand. It's in the automotive section back around their body filler and spray paint. And you can just take here and put a little elbow grease to it. I'll admit it's being stubborn coming off, but if you see it is coming off the silicone with some rubbing, the best way this works is to take one rag soaked in it and then a dry rag and go back over and just keep repeating till you achieve the results you're looking for. And here's a spot around this one. There's an incredible amount of the silicone left. This is definitely, but as you see, it is coming off, slow but sure. Yeah, that's the one that was the sloppier fitting hole that the bunch there I had to put around to hold the pipe in place. But it does seem to be holding and working. And again, I mentioned that in the first video on drilling them. The perfect sized hole would be a 1 3/16 hole saw, but I had a 1 1/8 and the 1 1/4, and the 1 1/8 I drilled the first one. If you watched the video, I had to take a Dremel tool and a file and everything else to get the smaller pipe to fit in. And then on the other hand, the 1 1/4 made for a fairly sloppy fit. But anyhow, and there's the stuff wiped off. And it's pretty much, like I say, coming into shape here. Only a few more steps to go. But the next one I'm going to take, this is up to you. You could just let it bear. I have some red spray paint. I'm going to paint it. You could choose any color you want. Or again, as I mentioned, just let it bear. But since I'm making this for a gift, I do sort of want to make it look nice. Furthermore, it's going to take about 2 or 3 coats to cover it properly. I noticed already that red letters that's stamped on the company that manufactures the PVC pipe, it's really hard to cover. It's wanting to show through. Now, on the good news, I made this a little over a year ago. The paint I put on, staying on, it's not pilling or nothing. It wasn't even actually paint designed for PVC pipe. They do make paint designed for it. I've had it in the past, but I did not have any on hand this day. But again, the regular paint seems to be holding fine, and it's starting to take shape there. You can still see some white through it. I'm going to take now and recoat it going the other direction. I'm going to go vertical up and down. That's looking a little bit better. It's covering pretty good. And I'm going to just go one more here back to the other direction, overlapping my coats. And I'm going to soon just call it at that and say it's good enough. It will do the job. Without a doubt, the plastic is not going to rust like metal or rot like wood or decay. So again, it's just strictly, again, an appearance. And now this I bought at the Salvation Army store. 99 cents. It's a little dish. Then I'm going to use this to mount to the bottom for the birdseed to catch. which does look really nice. The sad thing is after I built this about a month later, this ended up, it was swinging in the wind, and this ended up getting broke. And I had to replace it just with a, which is in the opening of the video, just a metal pie pan I had bought. Okay, well, since it's transparent lid, one can easily center it. And then I'm going to use these big washers. So when I tighten screws in, it sort of spreads out over a wide area and don't break the plastic, which again, as I told you, I do succeed on getting it together here, but later they break. Here I took and marked with the marker where I'm going to drill, and again, since it's transparent, it is easy to see, and there's the 2 holes marked to drill. Yes, when you build one, you can use the metal pie pan, like is shown in the video opening I bought at Walmart, or it's alright, but I'm not the happiest with it. Now, I thought these looked so nice. It sort of made it look like a great big upside down flower with this dish on, although I can't find any more plates like this. What I'd like to find is a plate similar to this, but something that's more sturdy, like something made by Rubbermaid or something that would take the abuse. Or sure, something is made. I haven't, looked real hard. But I'll have to look around. I've looked in the stores, but never the internet or nothing. I'm drilling the last hole. I've put an 1/8 inch hole in first, and then this is a 3/16. Just sort of doing it in steps and being careful not to. And again, I do succeed. Don't break the dish right now. And there's our washers over the holes. Now we're just going to carefully drill a pilot hole with the 1/8 inch bit down into the furring strip, just like about a 1/2 inch, not far. Yes, in theory, I should have taken the marker and marked it up and holding the washer over the plate and the drill bit. Don't do as I do. Again, that wasn't exactly safe. And now we're installing our screws. And I just found 2 metal roofing screws with a nice rubber washer on them to tighten up against those big washers. That rubber washer around the roofing screw will make it nice, soft. Again, snug it up smooth and evenly without cracking the plate. Okay, that's about tightened up. Now I think you're going to see here pretty close to the finished product. Only another step really to do. There, it's upside down, and now it's facing right side up. And would you look at that? There's beginning about 90% of it completed. Okay, and there, stick our lid back on, and that's only the last thing here to do is put these perches back in, which we just slid out when we painted it. And that, again, I picked the yellow. I sort of think that's novel, going with the red main body and that green plate. And we'll shove the other one in the lower room. Yeah, of course, the bottom one wants to fight with me, but get the rubber mallets. Now, earlier I slid right in. And look at that. There, the rubber mallet solved the whole issue. And there's, again, another look at it with those in it. And again, it looks like a bird feeder, in my opinion. Now we're going to have to mark here. I'm going to make a spot here to put some hooks to hang it. I have the mark yet at the top where we had marked around. I just had to come down from the center. Just don't have to be exact, just as long as it's fairly center. And I'm marking it 1 inch down below the top. Yeah, ready, go grab the drill, and I'm just going to drill a 3/16 inch hole. I'm not worried about a pilot hole on this, and that's going right through with no problem whatsoever. Yeah, and if at any time you're building this and you have a question, go ahead and feel free to ask in the comments below. And again, it's a homemade project. This is what I came up with. If I build another one, I'd change a few things myself, but it's a good foundation to build upon and the principle behind it. The biggest thing, I think, if I was doing more, I have to find something for the plate at the bottom that I like better. And there's the hooks I have. And you see there's a big washer here I'm going to put on with the nut that's already on it. And then and we're going to have another big washer. I'm going to put it on the inside of it. This way, when it tightens up there, it's not going to pull through. And there I have a locking nut. The locking nut I thought was a nice touch, so swinging in the breeze and such, it won't just work itself loose. And there you can see that haven't tightened it yet. Stack of how I have everything with the hook and the washers and the nut, and I'm just going to repeat and temporarily hand tighten the other side. Yes, the wood screws I used in this and these hooks and nuts and such, there's a discount place in our area that sells this sort of items by the bulk, and I love it there. It sort of makes it a lot cheaper and going to a lot of places and buying this stuff by the piece. And there I'm just using a ratcheting wrench and holding the outside hook and tightening it up gradually. Okay, and now I'm going to take and tighten that outside nut up against it as tight as I want to make it from the inside, and that's one taken care of, and then just do the same on the other one. That again, there's a nut on each side of it. The nut on the outside here I'm tightening actually came with these hooks, and again the locking nut I bought, and there's the lid back on it, and that is pretty much one more thing. I'm going to take a piece of copper wire that I had laying around and take and tie it around. And this again, you can use wire like this or whatever, string, as long as it's strong enough to hold the feeder with the feed. Indeed, I don't hold no responsibility if it falls down on that, if you use too light of a duty, like I say, holding device. But yeah, I don't think it's a real big issue, and I'm just gonna, I picked the copper because it is easy to sort of twist around. It's flexible and it don't snap real easy. That's what I like. Well, anyhow, that concludes this video. I hope you found this informative, and if you haven't, be sure to watch part 1 along with part 2, and you'll have the whole lowdown on building this.